Welcome to The Creatives. I am your host, Ashley Mahoney, and joining us today is someone you are all very familiar with, but she's a first-time guest to the podcast, the one and only Makayla Binter. Makayla, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's a beautiful day in paradise, and I tell you this every time we speak, but there's always so much that you are doing. It must be hard to keep up, but we're talking about your next project, and we're in June somehow. I'm not sure how June happened, but we're here. So we're talking June 26th, with the cleanup and art pop-up event that you will have taking place at the the Doobie Shop School of Cosmetology at 2107 Beatty's Road from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. on June 26th. Tell me a bit about this work that you're doing as part of the Creed Charlotte Equity Fellowship.
Yeah, for sure. I, as a Creed Fellow, we do a lot of conversations and have a lot of conversations about our Black and Brown communities, specifically in the West End, our historic West End. And then as a creative and artist, I've been asked to think really critically of how I use art as my medium of change, but then also sustainable change. This event is in collaboration with For the Struggle, obviously the Doobie Shop School of Cosmetology, allowing us to use their space, but then also Impact Global International, which is the cleanup organization I'm working with, and amazing artists like Frankie Zombie, Denier Davis, and Ricky Singh, as we all worked, and then also the Underground Art Bus, as we all like somehow work together to then create this really fantastic event. So this is basically looking at how cleanups are like a radical form of self-love, like communal love, in which we're not only showing love to our own community and our own streets, but then also since Beatty's Road does not have like those large trash cans that we sometimes see around like Noda or South End, is like, how can we be active participants in the way that our space and our community looks? But then also that pop-up is focusing on image and like self-love. So we're using that in the context of, well, I guess I'm, as an artist, interpreting that in the respect of Black hair. So how do we love ourselves through our hair? And since this is a school of cosmetology, I'm like, how can we also tie in like the history that we have with utensils like the hot iron or like the hot comb, to then manage all of this. And I assume for the podcast, it would be like all of this hair that we have. So that's like where the event came from. And yeah, I'm super excited about it. There's going to be a food truck, there's going to be live music. And I'm nervous and excited at the same time.
Fantastic. And everything that you've done. I know that we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of when you've been thoroughly bugged by me about everything you've been doing, from what started with the mural panel project at the Levine Museum of the New South, which was something you brought over from Davidson College, where you studied art and biology, but you were also a track and field athlete. So you have always had kind of this thing of doing a little bit of everything going on. But tell me a bit about how throughout this journey you've used art as a way of helping to spread a broader message, and that's carried throughout your work over not just the last year but long before that, because one, it seems like you've been part of the Charlotte art scene forever, but at the same time you kind of look back and you're like, she's only been out of school for a year. Oh my good, like you look at everything that you've done, you're just like, okay, keep it up, and you haven't stopped. It has been all gas this entire time. So tell me a bit about your journey as using art as a means of creating this broader conversation.
Yeah. So it's still being created, you know? Like I'm still trying to figure out again, like with this idea of how can I use my art more intentionally? How can art be used more intentionally? And then like, what am I trying to say and how am I trying to facilitate that conversation? It's still a growing skill set that I'm learning. And I think the thing that I've learned the most over the course of this year is that, um, art has a really beautiful way of allowing other people to enter a conversation, like because of how interpretive it is and how subjective it is. It allows for people to see their own thoughts, like their own experiences. They're coming at it from different angles and perspectives, and that really allows you to kind of just delve into it. So like this piece behind me, like everyone's going to see something different, and I think that is what allows us to really start a conversation. And when storytelling then comes into that is, how can that then be accessible by people who are not only being represented within that piece, but then allow for people who are outside of the piece to then enter it too. And that's something I'm still figuring out. But I think the thing that I've like realized the most is that like these works have a lot to do with like me as the artist being able to talk about it, and how I can make the language accessible to people, for people to then be like, oh, I totally get this. I see this, that, and the other. And then here's how my perspective then connects with that. So it actually, more than I think is like, it has a lot to do with me and my ability to then talk about what it is that I want to say, along with the piece representing that. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And you've taken your work to so many different spaces, whether it's the college campus setting or the museum setting in a museum meets public art concept, or whether you're talking Living Museum of the New South, Harvey B. Gantt Center, the Mint Museum. I mean, you were part of the group of artists who were selected for, then nominee, but now President Joe Biden's Build Back Better campaign at Camp North End last year. Hard to believe that was almost a year ago as well. But again,
Right?
we're going.
I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, we're going down a rabbit hole of everything that's happened, but not only, in all of these different spaces throughout the city, but also in communities that have been traditionally overlooked or underserved. You talk about the Unify mural that you did with Frankie Zombie and Garrison Gist last summer, or the West End mural on Beatty's Ford Road, or the work that you and Ricky collaborated on with the Sankofa mural. There are your mark is all over the city's creative spirit. When you look at the spaces that you want to bring this work to, how does the process work? Is it a matter of saying, here's the opportunity, or is it more of a, hey, I want to bring the work to these specific spaces? Because you're also a gallery artist with the Elder Gallery of Contemporary Art. So again, there's a little bit of you in every single space across the city.
Um, I think it's a combination of things. Like the funny thing about like the Mint Museum and the Harvey Gantt was like, I was part of these things. Like for the Harvey Gantt, I was a part of the Untitled showcase. And so I didn't really know where they were going to go from there. People were interested in buying the panels that I created for that project. But I was like, one, these are too big to fit in my apartment. And I, I don't know where these are going. So then Britt and them all took them, and they were like, yeah, we'll just like store them here at the Cocoon. I'm like, okay. And so then I didn't really think anything of it. I was keeping my eye on them simply because other people were interested in them. And then like a couple months later, they're like, oh yeah, they're going to be on show at the Harvey Gantt. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then with the Mint Museum, a very similar thing happened. Like Carla had this awesome chance, and like also just like fantastic job at curating this entire show with Jen Edwards. And she's like, hey, I need three pieces from you in like a month or so. They can be new ones, they can be ones you've already done, whatever floats your boat. And so I then like work with her, and I'm like, oh yeah, here are these pieces. And then and here we are. Now there's work. I had work up in the Mint Museum Randolph location. Like it's, and then the Levine Museum, like that was me reaching out. But I also had help of people at Davidson who are like, oh, well, here's like a contact for this person, here's a contact for that person. And then I'm just reaching out. And so I think it's like a mixture of everything. And now Ricky and I are to the point where we don't even have to tell each other about the project. It's just like, hi, like a really quick message, like, hey, this is something I'm thinking about for you. We'll catch up. And then we'll just throw each other into stuff. So like, that's how this, the project for the 26th came up too. I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm throwing you into this. I'll tell you about it later. And so now there's like that level of trust with us. But it's also become that point with like a lot of other people in Charlotte too, like Black Market. They've been very obviously super duper supportive, and so Carla will just throw me into stuff. Wesley will just throw me into stuff, and honestly, it's just like really cool to think that that can happen, and that's what people think of now when they're like, "Oh, this project is going on, Makayla should be in it," or like this project is going on, who could be a part of this? Oh, Makayla should. And like that's really good to know that that's kind of going on outside of just like my sphere of like objective of existence, you know.
Mhm. And in addition to all of this, you are also an educator, correct me if I'm wrong, but at Charlotte Country Day over the past school year. So not only are you in this process of curating and crafting work all over town, but you're also serving as an educator. So what was the process like? Were you the cool teacher, or was it just like, all right, I feel like I wasn't in your shoes that long ago, but okay, now I'm the one teaching you all about everything. So what was the process of being a teacher like?
Yeah, I introduced myself like really early, just being like, "Hi, I had a really crazy summer as an artist. If you have any questions about it, I'm here to answer them." And then I would keep them updated on like what I'm doing. So like depending on the class that I'm in, like if I'm in a design one class where they're learning about Photoshop and drawing and digital art, I would tell them about digital art projects. So I told them about like the Urban Outfitters pop-up that we did. And I like showed them like the design process of the bag. I've talked to students about like painting processes. So then like I'll show them my own work. We talk about murals. They are also just super into know like what I have going on too. So if I'm drawing on my iPad or if I'm like writing in my sketchbook, they're like, "Oh, Miss Binter, what are you doing? Like you always have like really cool things going on. So what's going on now?" And so it's kind of like a combination of educating but also like showing, because I didn't have that when I was in like high school and college. Like I had so many questions about this, but I still didn't think of it as a legitimate, oh my goodness gracious, no. um no, stop.
It's totally fine. So those who are listening to the podcast, we have a fur baby sighting, and we were all about it. I tell you guys all the time. At some point, there's going to be an adorable fluffy orange cattail that just kind of walks across the screen as soon as we bring a fur baby into our home. So in the meantime, we're living vicariously through you and Sammy, and saying that he's just so cute, so precious and perfect.
Yes, he loves to show himself on all things, especially
Exactly.
when a camera is involved.
Oh yeah. He's like, "Mom, like you're part of a podcast. I want to be part too. Like this isn't all
Right.
about you. It's about me too."
Exactly. He's an honorary member of a lot of my fellowships because he ends up on the phone at some point, like end up on the Zoom call at some point. So he's an honorary Creed fellow, and that's been decided too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, like this man, I'm sorry, I don't mean to still talk about him, but
Oh no, he can steal the show. It's okay.
has spray paint on his paw because he knocked over that spray can like right here,
Hmm.
and apparently there's still a little bit left in it, and now he's got some red on his paw.
He just, he's the child of an artist, so he's like, you know what?
I
Just
may as
gotta,
well be covered too.
yeah, exactly. It's like, Mom, you've got paint. I want some paint too, so it works out.
I have no idea what I was saying.
You were
Educator,
yes, you were talking
artist.
about how your educators in high school and college didn't necessarily offer the same insight that you're able to provide to your students now. So tell me a
Yes.
bit about, yes, that opportunity.
Yeah. So, but I also, to be fair, I never asked. Like, I never said, hey, like, how can I be an artist for real, for real? Because I just assumed it was like I'd be a starving artist until all of a sudden I sold like some $50,000 painting. Like, I thought that it just kind of happened that way. I don't know. I don't know why. Maybe it's because stop. Oh my gosh. Stop. Because that's the narrative that I was always told, or like I just thought. I never asked. So I was like, I want to make sure that I'm the person that my students can see who is like, no, these are very useful skills and things that you can use outside of just a creative setting. And here's how you can do it. And then like here's other people that literally live in our city that do it. It's also, I think, about experience. Like and also just like watching. So we led a couple of projects like designing stickers and doing like poster design, and basically just reiterating this idea that everything we touch, everything we see, everything we look at had to be designed by somebody, or created, or so if that's the case, then like how can we use these practically, to where y'all can do this too if you really want to. So it's, yeah, like that's kind of been my process as an educator. But of course, there's also like the social justice side of things. So like that class was really a combination of an experience that I had at West Charlotte, throughout my time at Davidson, through the Du Bois and World Scholar Society. Like I kind of built that class off of that process, because that's also something I didn't have in school, to where it was more conversation based and it was really interest based rather than like subject and material based. So like I didn't have a curriculum to follow, so I like my co-teacher and I really just made it. Like I made it for fun, just so that the kids could enjoy like the conversations that we had, but then also the subjects that would matter to them, or at least I think would be really important for them to discuss and understand before they went off to college.
Exactly. And like you said, there's this, even today, as people see a thriving creative community here in Charlotte, there's still kind of this narrative of, if you're an artist, there's this implication of, oh, therefore you must be a starving artist. What would you say to people? Because like you said, that's not the case. So when did you kind of have that light bulb of, oh, this can be a lucrative profession and not something that's just I do it because I love it, but it's not going to pay the bills kind of thing?
Yeah, it was actually literally after I graduated from Davidson. I was like, oh my gosh, I was kind of just like looking at the work that I had, and I was like, oh, I have so much stuff. I hope someone wants to buy this someday. And I was just like genuinely worried about people wanting to buy my work. And then obviously somebody in the universe said, shut up. And because literally the next day I had like 3 phone calls of people being like, hi, I'm a Davidson alum and I want to buy your work. And I was like, and so then I was like, oh, I I can't sell my work. I can't do this. But then it wasn't until I started getting commissions, like my first placemaking artist program, like commission through the city, the Black Lives Matter mural in Spartanburg, that I was like, oh, like this is a job. Like I can, okay. And yeah, and then it just went from there. And so now I'm getting like price tags on things, grants, the fellowships, like just understanding that this stuff keeps following up, especially like obviously my actions and my mindset have a lot to do with that, but just the opportunities keep coming. So it's like, why should I assume that this isn't something I can do as like a real job? Yeah. So that's kind of where my thoughts have been on that.
So what advice would you give to the class of 2021? I mean, coming out into the pandemic world in 2020 was, of course, a very unique set of circumstances, but this year's class, it's a little bit more of a, not even normal, but a reopened world. But what advice
Yeah,
would
a
you
lot
give
more
to?
promising.
Yes, yes. It'll be interesting to see what happens in July as things move forward. But hey, we're still in June for now. But
Right.
what advice would you give to them about maybe someone saying, no, I should get a quote unquote normal job, a safe job, or something that I'm sure they've got a family member saying, like, you need something that's going to pay the bills and be stable, and say, no, you can pursue your passion. It doesn't have to be in either or. And here's how to dispel the myth of being a starving artist.
Yeah. Honestly, my main thing has just been like follow what's driving you. Things keep popping up for me, and that's how I kind of get reassured by the fact that arts are something that I'm not going to be able to get rid of. And so that reassurance, and then also just like following that passion. I've been really intentional with how and what I do and why. And so if there is something that like you really want to try, something you really want to do, don't be afraid to reach out to the people who do it. Because more times than not, especially if they're local, they're going to be willing to talk to you about it and how they do it. That's how I figured out a whole bunch of stuff, of just like asking questions of people, or just having other artists push me. Like Wesley is the reason that I can use a spray paint can for real. Like, and it's because he threw me into it, showed me a couple things, and then said, I'm a bounce. And I said, oh my gosh, but it worked out, you know? So it's like, not only just asking for help when you need it, but then also reaching out. And I think the part of it that has been really helpful to me is understanding that the worst thing that can happen is they don't answer, they say no. And then if that's the case, like if that's the worst thing that can happen, then like it doesn't matter. Like, okay, they don't answer. I think we can take things like kind of personally sometimes, but understanding that like someone's actions are not a result of you. So if you're curious about it, just ask. And I think that actually goes a longer way than we like to think.
Fantastic. Well, Makayla, thank you so, so much for joining me on today's episode of The Creatives. And one more time, the reminder for everyone that on June 26th, from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. at the Doobie Shop School of Cosmetology at 2107 Beatty'sford Road, you can participate in the cleanup/art pop-up. It's free. It is a collaboration between yourself and several wonderful artists and organizations here in the city. So I see that there is a registration encouraged or required.
Preferably required, so I can have enough supplies for everybody.
Yes, the supplies are. It's like, you know, going to a family picnic and saying, "Hey, we didn't make enough food for everybody because you didn't say that you were coming." So, RSVP people. All right. How can people reach out to you and connect with you on all of the work that you're doing, whether that's social, website, the works? How can people reach you?
For sure. My Instagram is mkmk_15 or mkay_15. My website is makaylabinter.com. I also have stop.
So for those of you who are listening and not watching, Sammy's trying to climb over the TV. It's okay. It's adorable.
My website is makaylabinter.com. And yeah, my brain, I don't know. Those are my two forms of communication.
Awesome. Well, much success with the upcoming event and everything else that is going on this year. As always, we are thrilled to follow your journey and can't wait to see what happens for you next.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right, team. I'm going into full yoga instructor mode. So yes, team, all of you fabulous listeners, make sure that you go over and subscribe to the Charlotte Post, whether it's the print edition, the digital edition, or you just sign up for one of our newsletters. Head over, go do that. Subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, do all of the wonderful things. And until next time, I am your host, Ashley Mahoney. Thank you for listening.